Liz, how do you think this might impact the Alec Baldwin case?
I think it might help him. I know that might be an unpopular thing to say, but somebody's taken responsibility now. The jury has placed that responsibility on somebody. So if I'm him, I know that people say that.
No, look, I happen to believe she's much more culpable
for sure
than him in the sort of scheme of where things fall. Do you agree with that?
I disagree.
You think Alec is more responsible?
First of all, there's so much bad evidence that came out in this trial that's going to be used in his trial. Number one, you had Bryce Ziegler, an FBI firearms examiner, who said the only way you could discharge that weapon is by pulling the trigger, which is in contrast to what Alec Baldwin had said. So many videos of Alec Baldwin on that set, rushing the production, bossing people around, firing after you yell cut, holding the weapon in the wrong way.
One more. I forgot to recoil stuff. No, right away. Let's reload. Here we go.
Now, you could say, oh, well, how's he supposed to know? Well, evidence came out that he either didn't go to training or didn't pay attention in the training. He was the producer on the film. He had control. He had over authority of what was going on. I thought that this trial was almost an assessment of how bad it's going to be for him in July.
Chris?
Well, I think this goes back to the responsibility on a film set. This just isn't Hollywood. There was a case a number of years ago where they were shooting something in Georgia, and there was a train accident, and these producers of the film were held accountable and went to prison because one of the people on set was killed by this train. They should have not been there. Here's a case where not only was he in charge of making the film, he was the lead actor. He had responsibility for getting good people there, and this woman, the armorer, clearly was negligent.
But her defense, part of it was pointing the finger at Alec Baldwin.
Right, yes.
So let's listen. This is defense attorney Jason Bowles in closing arguments.
She could not anticipate what Baldwin would do. It was not in the script. It was not foreseeable. Management was responsible for safety failures and not Hannah. And again, I go back to the idea that Hannah is a scapegoat for all the management failures. They do hope she gets convicted, so they're all exonerated. They can move forward. The buck always stops with production, and it's their responsibility. In any organization, it goes from the top down.
Do we know if she might testify in his trial?
I think it's too early to say that unless she's given some sort of deal. I mean, you and I were talking about what her prison sentence could be. I mean, she faces up to 18 months. Perhaps it would be more lenient. I don't think you need her, though. I really don't. I think, by the way, you could have two things be true at once, right? You could have him say, Alec Baldwin went off script by pointing that gun, but at the same time, she needed to be there to prevent that from happening. Yeah. And that's why it doesn't negate her responsibility.
Halyna Hutchins' family is also speaking out, and it also sounds like they want a conviction of Alec Baldwin, too. We're satisfied that the jury, based on the evidence, found Hannah Gutierrez-Reed guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for her part in taking of Halyna's life. We look forward to the justice system continuing to make sure that everyone who is responsible for Halyna's death is required to face the legal consequences for their actions. But Liz, Alec Baldwin's trial will be a very different trial.
Oh, I would say so. It's going to have a lot more interest in it, but I don't know that he's a very likable person. This is probably not nice to say, but I think likability is going to be against him if people are going to be watching this day after day. I just don't think he comes across as sincerely as he thinks he is when he talks about the regret or feeling bad for her family. So I think that could hurt.
You think he'll testify? I think she didn't testify.
I think he might, because he's got that confidence, just like when he went on ABC with George Stephanopoulos to talk about not pulling the trigger. Now, they're going to play that whether he testifies or not, and if they can contradict that with the FBI agent, whom you spoke of earlier, that does not look good for Alec Baldwin.
And by the way, he got caught up in inconsistencies. At first, he said, well, Halyna handed me the weapon. No, first he said, Dave Halls handed me the weapon, then it was Halyna who handed me the weapon. You could say it was a traumatic experience. But, you know, those kind of inconsistencies are going to be haunting him if he actually takes the stand.
Were you surprised that she's not being allowed out pending? I mean,
it's a great question, because usually you would see that in a murder case.
Right. I mean, this is a maximum of 18 months here.
That's surprising.
Right?
That caught me off guard.
And especially in the Troconis case, which we all covered, she was almost granted bond. The judge said someone died here. Some people are thinking, was this her TV moment to try to make a statement that she's going to be put away? I was surprised. I didn't think it was necessary.
So that makes me think, remember, because you and I had talked about what kind of sentence she may get. That made me start to think you may be right, that she's going to get a tougher sentence. Because I was thinking she's going to get, 6 months or less. But now I'm starting to think
maybe
if he's holding her,
I mean,
I think she's in trouble. When it comes
It's a
to
good
sentencing.
preview of what we could expect at a sentencing, because
Yeah.
someone did die as a result of
Right,
this.
but that's true. But the crime is involuntary manslaughter. The
No.
maximum is 18 months.
Yeah.
And in a lot of these cases, there's very little prison time.
To be honest with you, I had trouble reminding myself of a case of just pure manslaughter where they were remanded. So it was
Right.
a little bit of a surprise, but it kind of gives us an indication maybe of what to expect.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.